Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, we are going to be talking with former NFL safety, former Tennessee Titan, Mr. Tank Williams. What's going on, man?
Yeah, what's good, man? It's good to hop on with you, talk a little ball.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're definitely going to get into that. And of course, you played the same position I did in terms of like college. So in college, I played safety too. So so we're gonna definitely get into some talk about defensive backs a little bit of your career, and of course the AFC South as well. But before we get into that, of course, we also open up every show with the Get Off Your Chest segment. Now, I always have something that's going to be, I'm thinking about, something that's on my mind, whatever, something that's there. This episode's got to be the mock drafts. Now, I understand everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to have this. Everyone wants to have that. But there's only so many times I can read a mock draft. Until I'm like, I got to sit this down and just watch what happens. Because, of course, everyone's going to, come up with their mock drafts. They're going to come up with the trades and all these different things. Like, okay, yeah, you're doing a lot, man. Just pick the picks. Just pick the picks, call it a day. But no, you got to put the trades. You got to do this. You got to do that. And hey, more power to you. You have the ability to do that. Whoever has the ability to do that, more power to you. I'm just saying that isn't for me. Just give me one, maybe two, and I am good. You can do whatever else you want to do with your time. But hey, that's just me. I'm just done with the mock drafts, or kind of starting to sit them down and just ready for Thursday. So that's for next Thursday, I should say. But that's just me. I mean, you have any thoughts on the mock drafts and just the millions upon millions of them?
I mean, I feel you from a certain extent, because it seems like when you get to a certain point that everyone's just trying to manipulate the mock draft so much, it just turns into clickbait. They want to do like this crazy trade or have this player going, either crazy high or crazy low to try to get the clicks and get viral on social media. But I think a lot of times, you see as you get closer to the draft, you start seeing a lot of smoke screens. Whether it's teams or anonymous sources putting out false information, whether it's about players or what teams are thinking. And so I get to the point where I just try to ignore all the noise, because a lot of times they try to get your head spinning. And then once the draft starts going, it's a lot of picks that make sense, whether it's just a straight up team need that you figured the team needed to take at a certain position, or it may be like, I didn't think about that connection that head coach had with this guy in college, or this new offensive coordinator actually coached with this dude's head coach in college when they were with a pro team 5 years ago or something like that. So there's some synergy as far as schemes and things like that. So I believe a lot of times you can kind of, after the fact, retroactively figure out where a lot of these guys were going to go if you just kind of take a step back and not try to go crazy with all the wild clickbait stuff that you see on the mock draft. So I think that's my take as far as mock drafts go in totality, and especially once we get closer to the draft.
Right. It just at some point, it's just like, just sit it down, enjoy the show.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's our Get Off Your Chest segment for this episode. But now we have to get into the, talking about you and your career, and of course, Titans football and AFC South. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit of the draft too, perhaps. But first, of course, your playing days.
Yeah.
I found out something that I did not know.
What's that?
When kind of checking out things, I was like, you played, grew up in Mississippi, and ended up playing at Stanford. And how was that going from Mississippi to Stanford? How was that?
It was wild. I mean, it's culture shock. I actually grew up in a progressive part of Mississippi, on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. But man, as you know, Mississippi is Mississippi. And so I grew up in a small town where actually I had a lot of black friends, a lot of white friends. I mean, we were pretty good in my area, but my cousins and relatives up in northern Mississippi, the schools that they went to were still pretty segregated and things like that. So I had a lot of experiences that, I feel a lot of people my age that lived in other parts of the country didn't. But I believe that's part of what made me who I am today. And as you said, I had an opportunity to go out and attend Stanford University, where when I went on my visit as a high school senior, touring the campus. I mean, you go down Palm Drive, there's palm trees lining a street that leads to the main quad of the campus. And then I was sitting down at a recruiting dinner, and I had Condoleezza Rice sitting to the left of me, who was Secretary of State at one time, and I had one of our renowned political science professors sitting to the right of me, and I was like, wow, like this place is impressive. And so to come from where I did in Mississippi and have that exposure to not only Stanford, but just going out to California, where it was just a totally different mindset than what I was accustomed to experiencing in Mississippi. It was truly an eye opener for me. And it was one of those things that led me post career to do as much traveling as I did with my now wife, because I feel like every time I visit a different country, I get so many experiences, meet new people, talking to people, learning about new cultures and things like that. And I believe just having that diversity of experience going out to Stanford and going to college and having that experience in contrast in Mississippi kind of broadened my horizons from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely would be a flip of the script. I actually have seen Stanford's campus. I actually, my cousin actually was a football player for the or NFL player for the 49ers.
Okay.
So when he was out there, we went to go visit Stanford's campus,
Hey,
went around everything, and I was
it's
like,
lovely,
"Wow,
right?
this is
Yeah.
nice."
Yeah, dog. It's special. It's one of those places where every time I drive back on campus, especially going down Palm Drive, it kind of gives you this funny feeling, man. Like the place is just truly special.
Definitely, definitely. So you have a great career at Stanford, and then you get drafted second round, 45th overall by the Tennessee Titans. Do
Yeah.
you remember that night, that
Hell
going
yeah.
into that, and do you remember exactly what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember going into the draft and having no clue where in the hell I was going to get drafted. That's one thing. I felt like I think someone told me I can go anywhere from the second round to maybe the fifth round or something like that. So I had no clue when I was going to get drafted. But I had a party at my parents' house, and my sister lives in the same town. So everyone was at my parents' house. I went down to my sister's house with just me and my parents. And I was sitting in the room by myself, just watching the TV. And I remember getting the call like in the second round, 45th pick. Well, before the pick actually came from Titans management, I'm on the phone with them. And I think right as I was wrapping up the call, they were announcing the pick on TV. And my parents bars in the door like, "Yo, Tank, you getting drafted by the Titans." I was like, "I know, I'm on the phone with them right now." And so then after I got off the phone, we all celebrated. And I went back to my parents' house and we had a big celebration that day. And the next thing I know, I was on a flight to Nashville that next day. And actually on my layover, I had a layover somewhere. And I ended up syncing up with Albert Haynesworth. And so we flew into Nashville together and had the first round and second round pick there. And that was the start of my playing career. So couldn't think of a better place to go either. I mean, Nashville was close to where I'm from in Mississippi. A lot of my family went to Alcorn. And so I grew up watching Steve McNair play ball. And so I had the opportunity to play with Mac 9, play for the Tennessee Titans. And they had just played in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. I mean, it was just truly an amazing experience for me.
Definitely, I understand that one. Yeah. Well, I got to ask you. Of course, you mentioned meeting up with Howard Haynesworth and then walking in, of course, Titans facility, things like that. But what was your moment where you're like, okay, I'm definitely in the NFL now? You're kind of your welcome to the NFL moment that you
had. Man, I think my welcome to the NFL moment, it was like maybe 5 or so games in. We played the Cincinnati Bengals up in Cincinnati, and we actually won that game. But they had a dude at running back by the name of Corey Dillon. And I feel like a lot of people don't give Corey Dillon the respect that he deserves because that dude was a monster in Cincinnati. And a lot of people forget that he had Lorenzo Neal blocking for him. And Lorenzo Neal, like I think about half of his body is just his head. And then the rest is like his shoulders all the way down. And he would lead block with head first. I mean, just hitting you like the juggernaut. And so I think I may have got like 2 or 3 mini concussions in that game. I think Corey Dillon had 30 carries, 138 yards in the tub in that game. Like I said, we won, but that dude got busy. And me being strong safety, having to come down and have force on Lorenzo Neal and try to tackle Corey Dillon all game long, like, man, that was one of those baptized by fires.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. Ooh.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want that in your life.
No, not at all, not at all. And I do have to ask. Of course, you did go on to once you went from the Titans to the Vikings and then to the Patriots, and in terms of your career, what were some of the best moments or best memories you have of your playing career?
I mean, I would obviously say like the first time I stepped foot on the NFL playing field, that being the dream. I mean, it was one of those things where it's not like I always started as a kid that I was going to end up playing in the NFL, but most people who play in the NFL just love ball. And one day think like, hey, I wonder if I can be out there. So the first time I stepped on the field, ran through the tunnel, and you hear the crowd cheer for you. I mean, there's no feeling like that. And I would say a couple other ones were we played the New England Patriots on Monday Night Football, and Javon Curse was dealing with the injury. And so he had missed like maybe 2 games or so, but he was coming back that Monday night game. And so they announced defense that game. And man, they announced the freak last. And when they announced him, he came out. I think he took his helmet off and dropped down to his knees and lifted his arms. And you can just feel the fans. Like it was almost like they were on the field with us. They were so hyped. And like I feel like we won the game right there when Freak ran out the tunnel. I mean, so that was just an amazing experience for me. I think playing in the AFC Championship game my rookie year, we played against the Raiders, and I'm from Mississippi, so Jerry Rice was my favorite player growing up. I loved the 49ers just because of Jerry Rice, and I almost knocked him out. He was a little woozy in the AFC Championship game, so having an opportunity to kind of get the best of my favorite player growing up and one of the greatest of all time, I mean, I feel like that was a pretty great experience for me. And I have a ton throughout my playing career. I think playing in the NFL is one of the best things I've ever had the opportunity to do. You're playing against the best, and, you know, it's a really test of not only your physical capabilities, but also your mentals too. Because I mean, I think the way that you play against some of these brilliant minds, whether it's Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, they're going to test you with their mental capacity on the field and try to get you in bad spots. And so being able to, you know, do your assignment, having a pretty good idea what they're trying to do to you, and in some cases capitalize, whether it's an interception or a sack or things like that. Those are some of your special moments that you have throughout your career.
Well, I do have to ask you, of course, you did play strong safety. And, of course, you know, you're a defensive back. You were a defensive back. I got to ask you about the defensive back play then compared to now. So what are your thoughts on just the play now compared to back, you know, early 2000s?
Man, how long we got? Because, I mean, there's a lot of levels involved in this. I mean, one thing is that you just can't get physical with the wide receivers anymore. Like, I understand what they're trying to do at the NFL. You want to protect the offensive players, protect players in general, try to elongate careers. Like, I get that. I'm all for that. But as you see now, man, the wide receivers aren't scared to go across the middle and catch the ball because they know if you just hit them with the Lance Stevenson on LeBron, like if you touch them like that in the middle of the field, they're going to get a flag. There's going to be a penalty. And so now the wide receivers have no worries about catching the ball over the field. So they make all these one-handed catches and they don't care about it. You can't really get physical with the wide receivers anymore because of whether it's incidental contact or pass interference or defensive holding. I mean, the way the game is set up right now, it's in favor of the offenses because obviously they want to see more points scored. And the irony of it is that even though you have all these rules that are set up against the defense, they said that the NFL had some raised eyebrows last year because they felt that scoring was down. So I feel like it's only going to get tougher for defensive backs specifically because obviously when you look at it, wide receivers are some of the most talented guys on the field. They know where they're going. Defensive backs don't have any clue where they're going. They just have to use little pieces of information, whether it's, oh, he's lined up on the top of the numbers. Oh, it's a 2x2 set. Oh, it's a bunch. And so you're trying to eliminate routes that they may be running to try to get yourself in a position to either make a break on the ball or make an interception or just try to make a tackle. And so I feel like it's just so tough to play DB in NFL these days, just based on the rules and because of the talent that you have on the opposite side of the ball.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. You know, I will say in the first 5 yards, you can definitely get busy there. But after that, nah, you definitely can't do too much. Definitely. Well, we're going to get into one of the teams that you used to play for. That would be the Tennessee Titans. We're going to kind of, you know, talk about their offseason and things like that. Mm-hmm. But first, we do have to take a commercial break on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
EDO Beard Butter and EDO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, You can get 10% off all these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get these the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All right, you got to definitely take time out to thank EBO Beard Butter for being a sponsor of the show. Definitely, of course, again, 10% off with the code MPAFC10. Now, back on the show, of course, like I mentioned before the commercial break, we were going to talk a little bit Titans. Mm-hmm. Now, the Titans definitely had an exciting offseason.
No doubt.
First, I got to ask you, did you expect the Titans to kind of go after some of the players they did and go after with some of the, and have some of the success they did going after some of those players?
I believe that it was a priority for the Tennessee Titans to improve their secondary. I think that's been a pain point for the Titans for a few years now. I mean, whether you're a follower of just straight up X's and O's on the football field or fantasy football, like that the Titans defense is going to place that you on a target throwing a rock. So to be able to go out there and not only get the Jerry Sneed, but then you get a Woozy as well, I mean, that's definitely solidifying your defensive secondary right there. And so I feel really good about the direction that the Titans are going. And so then, therefore, you don't have to wait and see what may be coming up down the draft. You got some proven players right there that can help your defense. And then I really like the move with Calvin Ridley. Now, I know a lot of folks are trying to say that the Titans were too aggressive, they overpaid and things like that. But I think that when you see the way that a team in your division, the Houston Texans, are trying to get better, and even though that happened after the Ridley trade where they could have Nico Collins, Tate Dale, and now they have Stephon Diggs, like it's an arms race in the NFL. And so when you have a guy like Nuke Hopkins and then you go and get a Calvin Ridley, that takes a lot of pressure off of Treylon Burks. And then you also have Chig there at tight end. So you have some weapons. You bring in a Tony Pollard too. So you have some players who are quite explosive on the offensive side of the ball. And I think it's important to kind of do that early rather than later because you want to find out what you have in Will Levis. I mean, a lot of teams aren't lucky like the Houston Texans. Like the Houston Texans found out that they got a dog in C.J. Stroud like early in the season. And definitely by the end of year one, it was like, all right, he's that dude. So the Titans are trying to figure out if Will Levis is going to be that dude for them by placing all these weapons around him now and seeing how he, matures in his second year. A lot of times NFL players, they'll make a significant jump in their second year. The game kind of slows down for them. They have a better understanding of what they're expected to do within their scheme. They have a better understanding of what the defense or the offense is trying to do to them. And that allows the game to kind of slow down for them like the Matrix. And then they make a little bit more plays. So that's what the Titans brass going to see from Will Levis this year.
Definitely going to be interesting to watch. We're going to touch on that one once again, maybe a little bit later. But I want to go back to Jerry Sneed. Now, of course, he's a different style corner than what they've had for a little bit here. You got to actually go in the slot, can be outside as well. What do you think his impact can be just on this defense in general, just him?
I mean, we know what kind of player he is between the white lines, but I think more than anything else, it's a change of culture. Like he's bringing a winning attitude. He's bringing production in the biggest moments. I mean, this guy's a Super Bowl winner. I mean, not only did he win the Super Bowl and play pretty well at the highest level against their opponents. I mean, that's also a thing where you're in OTAs and you're in training camp and things like that. He's grinding against one of the best to play that position in Patrick Mahomes, you know what I'm saying? And so I feel like this dude has been battle tested. He's learned a lot. He's probably been in the ear of Spags, Steve Spagnuolo, one of the better defensive coordinators in the league right now, who puts his players in the best opportunities to succeed on every given Sunday, Thursday, or whenever they strapping it up. And so I feel like he's the guy that could come in and bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of winning culture. And obviously he has the skill set to man it down either on the outside or slide into the slot and be a player that can hopefully shut down one side of the field so it lets the Titans be a little bit more creative in their defensive packages with the other 2/3 of the field.
Definitely, for sure. Now, of course, all of these additions, but there was one huge loss, and that would be Mr. Derrick Henry. So, what were your thoughts on them not bringing Derrick Henry back this season?
Man, I love King Henry, man. Especially when I'm working as a fantasy analyst, like all I would do is hype up King Henry, man, because that dude's the beast. And whenever it seemed like you had reasons to doubt him, whether it was coming off an injury or there was some deficiencies along the offensive line, like all the dude did was just truck folks, give him a stiff arm, score touchdowns, pile up yardage. I mean, the dude doesn't look like he's fallen off yet. It hasn't been a drop off in his play. But I think when you have a new head coach, coming in, you brought in the new GM last year with Rand Carthon. Like, you can see it's a culture change, and I liken the moves that the Titans are making similar to what you heard about in Seattle. I think it was today or either yesterday where they said that they removed a lot of the signature moments throughout the building where they took down a picture of Pete Carroll, they took down a picture of Richard Sherman, they took down like a picture of Marshawn Lynch with the Beast Quake. And I think it's one of those things where you're trying to say, hey, like all those things occurred in the past. Like, we respect what those guys did, but now it's time for us to build our own culture. It's time for us to step forth and build our own legacy. And so I think from that perspective, that's why the Titans felt that they needed to move on from Derrick Henry and let him go ahead and test the free agency waters and, find a home in Baltimore. And I think that they feel really good about Spears. I think they're going to feel good about Pollard and the explosivity that they can bring to that offense along with the playmakers they have on the outside. But I got to say, obviously, Titans fans are going to miss what King Henry brought between those white lines and off the field as well.
Definitely. I mean, of course, the passion that the fans had, knowing essentially it was going to be his last game here at Titan Stadium, or Nissan Stadium, I should say. And then, of course, him, when he grabbed the mic and was addressing the fans, at that point right there, you knew it was the last game he was going to play as a Tennessee Titan in that stadium. Of course, like I mentioned, want to go back to Will Levis. Now, Will Levis, the first game he played, of course, I believe it was against the Falcons or the Chargers? I can't remember which one. But anyway.
I think it was the Falcons because he lit them up.
Falcons. Yeah. Okay,
I think so.
The Falcons. Yeah. I was actually in attendance in that game, so I was actually in media that game, watching him light up the Falcons defense, which for those that aren't aware, they were a top 10 defense at some point during that season. And watching that and the potential that he had, what are your expectations kind of Will Levis going in with all this new weaponry, a little bit more weapons up front in terms of like an offensive line that can protect him a little bit more, and just a new offense that's kind of focused on the pass more than the run?
I think we have to understand what he's going to have to deal with coming into this season. So obviously there's a new head coach. There's going to be a new offensive system. So basically he's starting over as like a rookie again. I said you want to be able to see a significant jump between his rookie year and the second year, but because of the changes that they have in this scheme, it's going to be almost like a rookie year again. But that being said, there should be some familiarity with the players that they already have on the roster, even though you're adding guys like Ridley, Pollard, things like that. There should be some more understanding of what opposing defenses are trying to do to him, whether it's in the middle of the field or in the red zone. So once he gets the offensive system down, he should be able to process that much quicker, understanding what teams are likely going to show him, and then he'll be able to get the ball in the right place as quickly as possible. And so I think from that standpoint, you just want to see him grasp the system quickly and then also just process quickly, get the ball in the right spot, no turnovers, no mistakes. It's okay to throw the ball away, and then just go ahead and let those guys who they've surrounded you with make plays, whether it's in the running game with Pollard and the Spears, or you get the ball out to Nuke and Ridley and those guys and just let them get that run after catch and things like that, and just try to limit your bad balls, your bad plays. And I think if he can do that, continue to build some confidence, build some momentum, then the Titans will be patient with him and try to see what he can grow into, because he has all the physical capabilities. And what I really like was the comeback that they had against the Miami Dolphins last year, where he also showed that fire late in the game too. And it's one of those things like, okay, like he's not scared to lead these guys. You got some older guys on the squad like Newt Hopkins and all those, but he's not scared to show his passion, his emotion, and lead vocally. And so I think he has all the recipes to be an outstanding quarterback. He just needs to put it all together and play consistent ball.
Yes, and slide more this year. Good gracious. I don't know if you remember the when he took off and he got kind of whirly bird in the air.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm like, hey, I know you want to show you're a tough guy, but no.
Yeah, everybody want to be Willie Beam in their rookie year. Like, chill out with that, dog. You gotta play for about 10, 15 years.
Right. Well, I did want to get into more of the other teams in the AFC South, starting with the Texans, like you mentioned. It's arms race, and they definitely are trying to flex. They bring in Joe Mixon, they bring in Stephon Diggs, they bring both of them in via trade, extend Joe Mixon, make Stephon Diggs' contract just a 1-year contract. Then that was interesting. And then, of course, they bring in 2 former Titans, which is Danico Autry and Azeez Al-Shire. They go get Daniil Hunter. I mean, they're adding a lot of different pieces, and they re-signed Dalton Schultz. They got all these different pieces, offensively, defensively. I mean, what did you think? Did you expect them to do all this offseason?
I mean, I can't say I expect them to do all this offseason, but I don't think any of us expected the Texans to be in the playoffs last year either. So when you go from like booty butt cheeks to one of the best teams in the league, it's like, okay, now Nick Caserio's like, all right, now I got to make moves like down south hustlers. And so that's when you go and get a Daniil Hunter, and you go and you make a trade for Stephon Diggs. And I know you said that was an interesting move by them. I think so too. Like, honestly, like Diggs has been unhappy at damn near every stop he's had throughout his NFL career. What's the one way to make sure my boy's going to be happy? He's playing in a high-flying, explosive offense, and he's going to be on a contract year. You know you're going to get the best out of Diggs there. Whether he's trying to get re-signed to Houston or go sign elsewhere, he's going to put his best foot forward, which means that he's going to ball. And so if you got Diggs balling with a healthy Tank Dell and Nico Collins and my Stanford cat Dalton Schultz, and now you got Joe Mixon, if he can go ahead and show signs of life and be that dual threat that we've seen him be earlier in his career in Cincinnati, like the Texans are definitely cooking, man. And so I like that. But I think the one thing that can't be understated is the Daniil Hunter. You don't have that dude opposite Will Anderson. Like Daniil Hunter, when that dude is healthy and when he's hunting, man, he's one of the most vicious DENs coming off the edge. And when you compare that with my man Will Anderson, it could be something special, because one thing that I noticed about midway through the season last year, I think it was when the Texans were playing the Cincinnati Bengals, and they were just surrounding Joe Burrow, whether it was like rushing 4 or rushing 5. I was like, man, this front reminds me of the old San Francisco 49ers, not the 49ers that we saw last year where they had guys that weren't showing a whole lot of effort and things like that. It reminded me of those 49ers when my man D'Amico Ryans was there coaching, and those boys had their ears pinned back all the time and they were hunting. And so I think that's one thing that you can notice. Like, I'm going to be all over the place right now, but it's going to make sense, because you notice there's this difference with the San Francisco 49ers defense, the way they played this past year. I think more than anything else, they were missing that energy that they got from D'Amico Ryans. Like, there's something to be said. Like, you could run the same scheme, but there's a way that a play caller is able to kind of get a feel for the game. And at the same time, there's a certain energy that some guys carry. And I feel like D'Amico Ryans has that energy where, you know, you can feel the guys, like whether it's the defense, the offense, they vibe with that when they're making plays. And I think they just started to feel that energy. They got that confidence. They build that momentum. And so I think they carry that on, not only on through the playoffs, they carry that momentum on through the offseason. I think that's a great connection between the head coach, D'Amico Ryans, and also Nick Caserio in the front office. And so then you have all these free agents coming in. If you go ahead and kill this draft coming up and bring in some more playmakers, ride that momentum through the offseason and then to training camp, and then the Texans are going to be cooking, because everybody's already expecting big things out of them. And I think they want to keep that momentum going. So I applaud the hell out of Texas, man. I really love the moves they've made, starting off with the D'Amico Ryans as head coach, and it seemed like they've been full steam ahead ever since.
Exactly. And they're going into uncharted territories that no one ever thought they would be in the first place.
Especially this fast. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So just a quick question. Where do you kind of rank them in the AFC at this point? Do you put them up there at the top right now, or is it too soon to put them all the way up?
I mean, it's too soon to put them all the way at the top. I think they're a very talented team. But I think first and foremost, it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. They showed me that they can win with Tyreek. They showed me that they can win without Tyreek. They showed me that they can win with all the issues they had on offense with the wide receiver group all throughout the season. And then in the playoffs, just something clicked and they were able to get it done. And so I'm never going to doubt Patrick Mahomes. That dude is a special talent at quarterback. So he's always going to be number one until they prove otherwise. And I think Baltimore is going to probably come back with a vengeance. I know they've lost some pieces, but I think with Lamar and they still have enough dogs on defense to where they be able to, make some noise. So I definitely put KC and Baltimore up there, and then I think it's a question of like where the Texans fall in next. Like obviously Cincinnati's looking to bounce back, and you have some other squads along the AFC and things like that. But I think they're definitely top 5 in the league right now. And trying to knock on the door is just one of those things where they just have to go out there and prove it between the white lines. They're gonna have to have a big signature game against a team like the Baltimore Ravens or the Kansas City Chiefs. They already showed that they could beat the likes of the Cincinnati Bengals, but the Bengals were kind of up and down last year. So I think if they can beat a team, kind of like how the Detroit Lions, they kind of had some momentum going 2 years ago, and then they came into this last season and beat the Chiefs at home in Arrowhead. Now I understand they didn't have Travis Kelce, but that's one of those signature wins that say, okay, like we're definitely here and we can beat those teams in like a big stage game. I think the Texans still need like one of those so they can just kind of get over that hump because I feel they were talented enough to beat the Baltimore Ravens. They just weren't there quite yet, but they're coming. They're definitely coming.
Right. It's going to be interesting just to watch them, and the weight of expectations is going to be the biggest thing I think that's going to, determine how they do and succeed next season. Of course, the Colts kind of did the opposite. They instead of signing people outside of their team, they re-signed everybody else that was on their team. So I don't know. That was just interesting to me. Do you like their strategy of kind of bringing everyone back and just continuing the continuity?
I mean, there's something to be said for saying like, okay, we drafted these guys. We understand how they fit into our system. We feel like they're worthy of continuing on in our system because, they've held up, whether it's, being great starters or role players or things like that. And so I can applaud them for that. But I think more than anything else, like the Colts need some juice, man. Like wherever they find that in the draft, they need some juice. Because when we talk about the moves the Titans made, we talk about the moves that the Texans made. Obviously, we're going to get to the Jags, but I really love Michael Pittman. I think he's a great receiver, but they need some juice that can get over the top, someone that can kind of lift the top over the defense. And so whether that manifests itself in one of these young wide receivers in the draft, or maybe they end up getting the tight end, Brock Bowers. Maybe it's something like that. I feel like they need some juice to add to Michael Pittman on the outside. But I think one thing that can't be overlooked as well, I mean, we can look at them signing Michael Pittman or bringing Kenny Moore back, one of the better nickel cornerbacks in the league, or signing Joe Flacco as a backup. But one thing, they're going to have Anthony Richardson healthy going into next season. And they were able to mend that bridge with Jonathan Taylor. I think that can't be understated, like, because everybody and their mama thought, oh, boy, was up out of there. He was like, hell, I don't want to play for the Colts anymore. But they were able to mend that bridge, get him back in the fold. So now they got one of the better running backs in the league, one of the more dynamic dual threat quarterbacks in the league. Michael Pittman is a solid wide receiver who you can depend on, but they just need to add some juice opposite of him, like you see with some of these other teams around the AFC. And if they can do that, I think the Colts will be able to take a step forward.
Definitely. Now, of course, if Richardson is to get hurt this year, there is also the veteran that they did bring in. That'd be Mr. Joe Flacco. So that'll be interesting.
Good about that. Absolutely.
If he jumps in there, that'll be really, really interesting to see. But of course, I want to move on to the Jags. They added Gabe Davis. They added Eric Armstead, which I think was a huge signing for them. And they added Darnell Savage, which, one thing I found out about Darnell Savage is they actually are not planning to play him at safety. Right. They're planning him to be their starting nickel, which, I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, what did you think about that? I thought they would start him at safety and not just a nickel back.
Yes, interesting. I mean, but a lot of times safeties, I mean, we had a lot of packages when I was in Tennessee where I was like a big nickel. So if you have a guy who has the capability to play solid in the run defense, the run fits, and he can hold up in the slot, then I have no issue with it. I mean, the one thing is that a lot of times teams are going to try to slide their best wide receiver into the slot, and he may get a little exposed that way. So it depends on exactly how they plan on using him in the nickel and what kind of coverage they're going to be playing. Are they going to be a lot of zone or are they going to be a lot of man? And so I think that's going to dictate how successful he can be sliding into that nickel full time. But, as far as schematically, like I've seen teams try to do that and be successful with that. So I just have to see it in action. But I think when I look at the Jags, a lot of times, I mean, I think we'll try because I really like them extending Josh Allen because he had himself a hell of a season. I like them bringing in Eric Armstead. I know it sucks for them missing out on Calvin Ridley. And I think that's another reason I really like that move for the Titans, because not only do you get one of the better route runners in the league, and he had a hell of a year after missing a year. So I think he's going to be that much better this coming season. But not only do you get him on the Titans roster, but you take him away from a divisional rival. So I think in that instance, I even like this move more for the Titans. And so then when I look at the Jags, you get Gabe Davis. I'm interested to see how he's going to look, because I think he'll probably get similar target share in Jacksonville as he got in Buffalo. I mean, he was used sparingly. A lot of times he'll go 0 for, have 1 or 2 catches. And I think you can still see the same thing in Jacksonville, the way that Trevor Lawrence spreads the ball around to Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk and Zay Jones and all those guys. I mean, so it's never like you had Calvin Ridley or one dude who just seemed like they were just the alpha wide receiver every game. And so I think from that standpoint, the Jags still have some work to do. You lose some of that explosiveness on the outside with Calvin Ridley leaving. I think they need to go out there and get a cornerback. And if both of those cornerbacks are available for them when it's time for them to draft, I mean, personally, I like Mitchell. I mean, Mitchell is explosive, has really great hands. And I think when you're looking at a cornerback like that, he gives you a little bit more upside than what you'll get out of Terrion Arnold. But I think you really can't go wrong with Arnold as well, because he's been tutored by Nick Saban. So you understand that he knows a lot of concepts. He knows football like the back of his hand. And that's one thing that a lot of NFL coaches really love about guys who come out of Alabama, their football IQ. And so I feel like you can't go wrong, but I would just go with a little bit of that more upside from the physical aspects of Mitchell.
All righty. Sorry for the technical difficulties. One, little bit of technical difficulties with the internet, but hey, we are back. Like you were saying, we talked about the Jaguars, and we were in the middle of talking about the Jaguars and their offseason, and talking about Ridley and losing Ridley, but getting Eric Armstead. So yeah, we were talking about that when we left off. Again, apologies everyone listening. A little bit of internet issues. I don't know what exactly happened there, but they didn't want me to be great. So so we're back. But yeah, if you would kind of go ahead and kind of explain a little bit of what we were talking about there in terms of
Yeah, so I was
Losing
just saying that, for the Titans
Ridley, but
perspective, it was
gaining Armstead and then the big, the
yeah. I was saying
the
from the
thing that
Titans
would
perspective,
hurt.
it was Oh, I think it was a little bit of a delay. Okay, I think we're good now. But I was saying from the Titans perspective, it was almost like they got the best of both worlds. They were able to get a really good wide receiver in Calvin Ridley, and at the same time, they were able to take him a piece away from their division rival. So I think from that standpoint, I really love the move by the Tennessee Titans, and I also think that getting a guy like Eric Armstead, a guy who's played in a lot of big games, a proven leader, a really big cog in the middle of a defense, I think that's really going to show up some of the issues that the Jags are having on defense. But I think more than anything else, I mean, I think when you look at a lot of people that they're trying to say the Jags may consider as far as their draft pick, whether they're going to go with the edge rusher or D-line or they're going to go with cornerback, I think when you take, Walker first overall, and then you have Josh Allen, who's one of your top first-round picks, and you just sign him to a lucrative deal, to me, it only makes sense to take one of those top cornerbacks if they're still sitting around waiting. And I think if it were me, if you had an option between Mitchell and Arnold, I would go with Mitchell, just for the simple fact that the dude just has amazing upside. I mean, his physical attributes are outstanding, really good hands, quick feet, come in and out of his breaks, make plays on the ball. And so I really like that. I mean, Arnold looks like a solid player, can make all the plays for you. I just like that Mitchell's a little bit more twitchy. And I think from that standpoint, when you draft in that high, if you got two comparable players, I'm gonna go with the guy that has a little bit more upside athletically, especially when you look at some of the wide receivers you have to go against in the AFC, whether it's Calvin Ridley, who you already had on your team, so you know all about him. You got Nuke with the Tennessee Titans. You also have Diggs and Tank Dell and Nico Collins with the Texans. I feel like that skill set will kind of align with those matchups a little bit more, and so that's why I think if the Jags have the opportunity with all the top cornerbacks on the board, that's probably going to be the direction that they go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting just to see what happens and things like that. But I want to get a quick little bit of draft talk in with you, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Of course, the Titans are at number 7. There's been talk about Joe Alt. There's been talk of, at some point, some people have talked about Brock Bowers. There's also been talk of Malik Neighbors, and if Marvin Harrison Jr. falls, there's been talk of him.
That's not happening.
So I don't see it very much happening. But as far as the choice there for the Titans, I mean, say Neighbors is there and Alt's there. Which direction would you go in if you were the Titans?
So I look at it this way. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and act like I'm some offensive lineman guru. So I just put it like this. Like, if you feel that after your due diligence that Joe Alt can be like the next Joe Thomas or something like that, then you go ahead and draft him, and he's going to be a cornerstone of your offensive line moving forward, because you can't replace chips like that in the game. Like, that's somebody that's going to not only pave the way in your run game, but also protect your most valuable piece of your team, and that's your franchise quarterback. So I think if Joe Alt is that guy, you have to be sure that he is one of those game-changing corner pieces on your offensive line. If he's that dude like a Joe Thomas, then you go ahead and take him. But at the same time, like, I was looking at the 2018 NFL draft where the Colts took Nelson. Nelson. And then the 49ers came back and they took McGlinchey at number 9 overall. And I feel like you can't take McGlinchey and then you have like all these other explosive players on the board. And like, hindsight is 2020. But if you feel like Joe Alt is going to be like another Notre Dame tackle and that's McGlinchey, then I'd rather take a shot on like a Neighbors or someone like that, or Brock Bowers or something like that, where I feel like I can add a little bit of juice to my offense. And at the same time, it's a deep offensive line draft. You come back and get another solid guy later in the draft. So I feel like no matter what, like, you have to be rock solid on your evaluation of that player and know that he has a really high floor and also has a lot of upside when you take him that high in the draft. And so, yeah, I think that'll be my assessment on that.
Okay. All right. And then as far as the Colts, of course, the big thing we'll talk about them is a cornerback. You know, they brought back Kenny Moore the second. He's a slot corner, probably the best slot corner. You know, think he's the best slot corner in the NFL. But they are missing the outside corner. They do have Juju Brents, but they're still missing. They still need to add to that group. And also another thing, they had a combination of pass rushers that did well. However, they don't have one dominant pass rusher. They thought Kwity Paye was going to be that guy, but you know, he's getting to the end of a rookie contract, and he still can't be that consistent guy. So if you're the Colts, do you go for a cornerback to add to that room, or do you go for an edge rusher, somebody that could potentially be dominant? Now, I would just keep this in mind. They did try to go to Daniil Hunter, and they did try to get L'Jarius Sneed this summer as well. So, or this all season as well. So, you know, which one would you go for if you were that defense and the Colts?
Best available. If you understand that both of them are needs, I think you just have to survey what's already taking place. Like, obviously, you need a cornerback. There's some other teams that need a cornerback. Somebody may get aggressive, understand that you need a cornerback and try to jump ahead of you. So if that's the case, I would be patient and then see how the draft board is falling to you. I mean, it may be one of those things where teams jump ahead of them and maybe take a cornerback or two. I doubt that happens, but if it's a possibility, you have to be ready for everything. Then maybe you slide back and then take one of those edge rushers. Or if you know you have your pick, I would say that if all things are equal for me, if you have an edge rusher and a cornerback, and you think that both of them are equal capability, me personally, I would probably go with the edge rusher. It seems like for some reason, NFL teams are putting more of a point of emphasis on the D-line over the cornerback. And I say that because if you look at the salaries, the top paid defensive players in the league, the top 20, you won't find a cornerback in it. You'll find Nick Bosa, you'll find Chris Jones, you'll find like a bunch of these guys who just re-up, whether they're defensive tackles, DNs. It's surprising to me that those guys are making close to like, I think Nick Bosa is like up where, like 36 or 39, something like that, mil a year. And now Chris Jones is like in that 31 range or something like that. And you have these other guys in the 28, 27 range. Highest paid cornerback in the league, 21 mil a year. Now, I think that's probably going to change once Sauce Gardner and some of these other guys end up re-ing up where you get these younger guys who are trying to get that first big contract after their rookie deals. But as far as right now, that's another reason why I really like the moves that the Titans made, because you're going to get one of the better cornerbacks in the league with L'Jarius Sneed, and cornerback values and salaries are suppressed. So you sign him, that's market with all the other top cornerbacks in the league, but they're making 20 mil a year, where the top wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, is making 30 mil a year. So when you look at it from that standpoint, you're going to get more value, I feel, if you take the edge rusher earlier based on the premiums that they're getting in their second contracts. And so I look at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, definitely a great perspective in terms of looking at it and seeing what, you know, is the best addition or the best piece for what they have, what they need. Texans, last thing I want to ask about. They have added all these pieces. However, you got a Derek Stingley Jr. on one side, and you got Jeff Okudah and the CJ Henderson trying to get that other cornerback position. Both of these guys are on their third team. Now, Okudah was Detroit, then Atlanta, now Houston. CJ Henderson was Jacksonville, Carolina, now Houston. So with that being said, I mean, I would think they would probably go after a corner when they're able to draft, which is the second round.
I would think so too. But at the same time, I think they're probably looking at it from perspective that we know we got one side of the field on lock. You have two cornerbacks who are drafted in the first round, so we know that they got some pedigree. We know they got some upside. Maybe it's one of those things where we get them on our squad and we can coach them up better than some of these other teams that coach them up. And then at the same time, you have some draft picks coming along where either in the second round, third round, something like that, you take a shot on the cornerback. You understand that you have one of the hottest young defensive minds in the game that's going to get them coached up and try to help them out. And so I think if you can piecemeal a secondary that way, you may be okay. But that's another piece where we look at like, okay, they bring in a Danico Autry, they bring in a Daniil Hunter, you pay him with Will Anderson, you bring in some of these other linebackers and stuff like that. And so you kind of solidify in that front seven. So that takes a lot of heat and a lot of pressure off that secondary as well, because if you can stop the run with those guys, if you create pressure, whether it's sacks, strips, tip balls, things like that. That makes life a lot easier on your secondary. So I think just from that standpoint, they've improved their defense. They improved their secondary by what they've done with that front seven.
Okay. All right. Definitely a good perspective there. I will say I want to thank you, Tank, for definitely kind of giving me a different perspective on a few different things. And of course, talking Titans and talking your career with the Titans. But also, we don't end the show with just talking, ball or shop.
Okay.
We end the show with a game. It's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. First question, Eddie George or Steve McNair? Which one is Mr. Titan to you?
Man, it has to be Mac 9. I mean, Mac 9, it was one of those things where he gave you belief, man. I mean, there were times where we had no clue whether Steve McNair was going to play or not. Like, he would get banged up the week before, wouldn't practice, limping around the locker room, seemed like he could barely walk. And then somehow, some way on Sunday, they'll give him that Toradol shot. He'll go out there, throw on that cape, and that dude was Superman. He'll lead us to victory. I mean, so the things that I was able to see Steve McNair do, it was really great to see him get that co-MVP with Peyton Manning that year, because I really felt that he showed that he's one of the better quarterbacks, one of the better playmakers in the NFL. And that was before that they really gave a lot of love to these dual-threat quarterbacks the way that they're doing right now. And so, yeah, for me, it got to be Mac 9, and it's not even close, and I love the hell out of Eddie.
There we go. I get to see Eddie. Actually coaching Tennessee State. So
Yeah.
I actually do cover Tennessee State football. So I've definitely got to see him coach and grow as a coach. With the Tigers. Okay. Next question: Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? Which one was the toughest to play against?
Well, for me, it was Peyton Manning, because we had to play that dude twice. and I feel like Peyton had it out for me. It was my rookie year. We played the Colts in Indianapolis, and I had myself a game. I think I got Pepsi Rookie of the Week. I ended up getting a sack on Peyton Manning, hit him from the back. No diddy. And he fumbled the ball, and then Keith Bullock scooped it up, went in the end zone, scored. And man, I feel like Peyton looked at me that game and was like, "You're never gonna get me again like that." I don't know if I ever got a sack on him. I picked him off in some other games, but I think that was the hardest I ever hit Peyton Manning. But I mean, he was just tough, because it was one of those things where I was talking about where, I mean, obviously he had a complete control of their system, and we had to try to show the same look every time. That was our plan against Peyton Manning, give him the same look every time, and then we either stand set or rolling at the snap to try to confuse him. So when he had to get down, look for the snap, then look up, we were in a different spot. So it had to take him that much longer to try to process and figure out what we were in. And but that dude, man, he was smart. He and Tom Brady, they knew what defense was trying to do to him, and once they figured it out, they could have pinpoint accuracy, putting the ball where it needed to go, and they had weapons on the outside. When you speak specifically of Peyton Manning, when you got Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne and Dallas Clark and all those guys, like, they were tough to battle on a couple times a year. So definitely Peyton Manning, even though obviously Tom Brady's the GOAT. Sacked Tom Brady too, though. So I felt like I had some success against both of those guys.
There we go. You did a lot more than some other people would say they could be able to do. Those two. Now, the next question: fantasy sports. Do you take the quarterback, or do you take the ball dominant running back?
Are we talking about super flex or 2 quarterback leagues, or just 1 quarterback?
You're talking about 1 quarterback league.
Yeah, if it's 1 quarterback, then definitely not taking the quarterback first. And obviously, last year, I had the mindset that I felt that it was probably necessary to take a wide receiver before running back. But then Christian McCaffrey proved me wrong, and I hate that I shorted and slighted my Stanford Cats. So right now I feel like if Christian McCaffrey is still getting that same volume, and obviously the 49ers, if they have all the pieces back in place, it depends on what's going to happen with Brandon Ayuk and if they ever replace him if he does leave. But if all things are the same in San Francisco, I think that running back position is going to be who you want. And if not, then I really like a lot of those high-volume wide receivers where you're talking about your Justin Jeffersons and guys like that who are going to be the focal point of offense, especially in PPR.
Mm-hmm. All right. One guy that definitely was a big time guy when he played, it was Keenan Allen last year. Sure.
My goodness. Damn, yeah. It was crazy. And he finally stayed healthy. Unbelievable, man. He balled.
He did. Now I got a movie one for you. Set It Off or Menace to Society. Which movie are you taking?
Oh man, Menace to Society. Even though I love Set It Off, man, a really great movie. I probably haven't watched it enough, even though I watched it a lot. But Menace to Society, not only was the movie tight, like I had the soundtrack too, man. And so, man, both of those things went hard. So I gotta go with Menace to Society.
Yeah, you can't forget that song by MC8, Straight Up Menace.
Yeah,
You cannot forget that song. All right, now last one I got for you: John Lynch or Andrew Luck. Which Stanford guy are you taking?
I gotta go Luck. I love John Lynch. John Lynch, one of the better safeties that's played in the league, Hall of Famer. But Andrew Luck, man, he was definitely a culture change for Stanford. I mean, I think he was one of those guys that definitely put Stanford on the map. I think when I was there, we had one of those things where we would be pretty good one year, so-so the next year, and then we go to the Rose Bowl and then kind of so-so, and then we had like this lull period, like a deep, deep valley. But then once Harbaugh came and recruited those guys, and then Andrew Luck was there along with David Shaw, and those guys had a hell of a ride. And obviously, I just hated to see his career get cut short because he was on the tear early, and he showed that he was one of the most explosive quarterbacks in the league, just being able to rifle the ball all the way around. And he was tough. He'd try to run over you. If you threw an interception, he was going to put his face mask square in your chest. I mean, the dude was special, man, and smart, nerdy as hell, but just an ultimate competitor. So I think from that standpoint, even though he probably didn't play long enough to be a Hall of Fame, I think just his impact on Stanford and the impact that he had early on in the league, I just got to roll with Luck.
I hear you there, but you did play with one of the Stanford greats that I remember watching. That means Mr. Troy Walters.
Yes sir. Yes, sir. Just talking to Troy the other day.
Oh man, I remember watching him. I actually, I went to college. 2000. So I definitely remember watching Troy Walters. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Troy was the man. Won the Biletnikoff. A lot of people be like, I understand, like Peter Ward got into the trouble and all that, and so that's why he wasn't in contention. But man, Troy was just a truly special wide receiver. I mean, it was one of those things where a lot of times you see a lot of short wide receivers getting a lot of love in the NFL now, and Troy didn't have the speed in him, and he still wasn't as tall as those guys like Antonio Brown and Tyreek Hill, but the dude just ran amazing routes, made plays, ran away from defenders, and I mean, he did on a consistent basis. When everyone knew he was getting the rock, he still went out there and balled out. And so, yeah, man, I love Troy.
Yes, sir. That's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Tank Williams, you're off the hot seat. We have reached the end of the show. I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for kind of giving your analysis, talking about your career, and then, of course, the game as well. So, if you can, tell everyone they can find you on social media, any other things you want to talk about that you're working on as well.
Yeah, you can find me at Tank Williams 13. That's on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can find me on Threads. I'm probably a little bit more active on Threads than I am on X. Find me at the same handle on Instagram as well. I was doing some work with Yahoo for a while in the fantasy sphere, but I was doing some analysis for Bleacher Report last year, along with Bally's on their gambling show, Live on the Line. So doing a little bit of that. Also, spend a lot of time around Stanford here lately too, and trying to, kind of help them recruit and trying to get into a little bit of coaching as well. So I just love ball, and so I try to do everything around ball. And so, hey, if you want to talk ball, listen to me talk ball, just hit me up on social and let's get a conversation pop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I greatly appreciate the conversation. It was definitely a fun one for sure. And then also, I want to, of course, let everyone know they can find me. Of course, you can find me, the host of Touring the AFC South, Mike Patton, on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82. Artist formerly known as Twitter. Of course, giving props to Prince, which is one of the greatest artists of all time. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. And of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on all listening platforms, whether it be Amazon Music, whether it be iHeartRadio, whether it be Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it, we are there. And of course, we're on YouTube as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out. Peace.